I'm back. I'm walking along the path. I was going to go up onto the moors, but the road up there was really noisy. But I'm happy to be walking along here again today. It is cloudy, it is quite cold, but it's still beautiful. Anyway, I've got lots of thoughts going through my head to chat to you about on this walk today. I've had 5 days away in Copenhagen with Claire doing high rocks, which I loved. And I thought it would be really good to talk about kind of approaching being away, really. It feels like a good opportunity to talk about like our goals and how we might focus on different things while we're traveling. So we might start with that. I had the best time away. And my goal when I was away was absolutely, definitely not going to be focusing on fat loss at all. I tend to not go into dieting as such, but I do have times where I'm like, whew, I could do with tidying things up a little bit, which is probably where I am right now, kind of coming out of that winter hibernation and thinking, I really feel like really embracing different sorts of food, the less stodgy food again. It's kind of changing, the season change, and what I crave changes with it. Anyway, I thought I'd start by saying about how useful the no crap cake condition that I have is when traveling. I think this is when it comes into excellent use, because when you go away, you're not necessarily focusing on fat loss, but you also don't want to just completely give up and gain weight and then go home feeling like you've put on everything that you'd worked hard to lose before you went away. So the no crap cake condition is something that I absolutely love to use, and that is where it doesn't have to be cake really, but those more indulgent foods, the things you might call a treat. When you're on holiday, you're going to be looking at them as being things that feel special, that are going to be incredible. You might look at them and go, oh, do I want that? Or is there going to be something even more incredible that might come up later? And if the answer is more incredible later, then you wait and you don't have it. Now, Claire and I embraced the no crap cake condition most of the time. There was one area where I feel like perhaps we didn't, which I'll explain in a moment. But in the morning, we really wanted to go and have like coffee and a Danish pastry, or I was having this kind of cardamom-based cake, was incredible. So we'd buy from the supermarket the day before, like a kind of protein yogurt, like a Pro-Yo, and we'd have that in our hotel room in the morning. It's not very high in calories, gave us a bit of protein, made us feel like we were focusing on something there with our goals, and we were really active during the day. And then we go quite excitedly into town and sit and have a coffee, and we choose a delicious cake. And like, it could have been a pastry-based cake, but for me it was like, I guess more of a bun, because that's what I love. So, you know, we were having one of those, not every day, but most of the days we were there, not gonna lie. And yeah, I felt good about that. There was no kind of guilt involved, because it was something I chose to do when I could sit down and really enjoy it. I knew that it wasn't going to be undoing anything, and it was absolutely delicious and something I can't get at home. So that was kind of me putting that into action. Now, you could do that with alcohol. You could choose to have it less often, but make sure it's more enjoyable. It's stuff that tastes incredible, and obviously any other sort of indulgent snack. Now, we were managing this pretty well, and I don't tend to drink alcohol at home at all, but I did have a couple of glasses of wine, maybe like 3 actually in total. Anyway, I had some glasses of wine whilst I was away with Claire, and it was nice again, because I was sitting down in a beautiful city, having a glass of wine with my dinner, and it felt nice. The place that we didn't necessarily stick to the no crap cake condition was with sweets from the supermarket. So we bought a couple of packets of sweets, and I think the aim was to have those pre-high rocks. We had some in the hotel room the night before. Like, we didn't necessarily need them, but when you're sitting in your hotel room and you're a bit hungry and they're there, it happens. And that leads me on to something else about traveling. These things, you have to go out and buy, you know, and we bought them because we were doing high rocks, but the main thing is that you don't have them just around you because you might have a snack drawer at home, kids at home. You have to go and buy them. So in some ways it should be easier to not eat them. Anyway, we did eat them. I also am a massive fan of licorice, and licorice is a big thing in Denmark. I'm not going to be beating myself up for having a bit of Haribo, or it was kind of the licorice Haribo. And actually there was some that I really didn't like and I threw it away. So I'm not going to eat it just for the sake of it. I am not going to, well, I view it as a sunk cost really. If you buy something and it tastes really not very nice, eating it because it feels like a waste also feels like a bit of a sunk cost. So I did throw some away. So there we go. And probably the extra sugar on High Rocks Day helped. But this also, well, these extra carbs whilst we're away, this extra sugar and travelling and so on, can have you coming home feeling a little bit bloated, a little bit puffy, and you can feel a bit worse with body image. You can be a bit like, oh, that's it, I look awful, blah, blah, blah. And there's something I want you to remember here. So firstly, yeah, you might be a bit bloated, you might have gained a bit of weight, you might have gained mainly water weight because of the fact you've been eating differently while away, you've been travelling. So you definitely want to give it time to settle down. But the other thing to remember, if you're feeling like this at any time anyway, is it is completely normal for body image to change through your cycle. They did a study, it's like the big A, but there is a study, like a PubMed study, that they looked at or tracked women's body image through their cycles. And they did it by looking at where they glanced in their mirror. So they had them kind of looking in the mirror at different times in their cycle. And they noticed that, I'm going to go this way. They noticed that during the follicular phase, which is the bit after your period started, for the next kind of couple of weeks until ovulation, during that stage, women would look at the areas that they liked most about themselves. And that's kind of where they were focusing their attention, feeling pretty good. And during the luteal phase, which is after ovulation, before your period, this is the time where you might struggle with body image a little bit more, struggle with energy a little bit more, feel a bit rubbish in general. In this stage, they tended to look at their less favourable areas, the areas that they liked the least about themselves. So, you know, if you are feeling like this and it is that time in your cycle, then it is also worth reminding yourself that this feeling will pass. And that's also why I think it's so good to focus on the actions rather than beating yourself up about not being at the goal yet. If you focus on, right, well, I am feeling a bit rubbish at the moment, but I know I can still do that. That will mean that you're not giving up because of a hormonal feeling or because of a feeling from travelling. And I think that's always important to think about as well. And obviously this is more common when our hormones are all over the place during that kind of perimenopause stage of life, that you can have these real, you can beat yourselves up. And I think it is really important that we practice a bit of self-compassion here, to take that moment to sit down and go, nothing's changed, as in my behaviours haven't changed. I haven't necessarily been eating more, blah, blah, blah. So therefore, it's unlikely that I've gained a lot of body fat. So this is likely hormonal and it will pass. And then with travelling, it could be like, well, you know what, I might have gained weight, but I made these choices knowing where they fitted with my goals. And also I'm aware that most of this could be water weight and I'm just feeling a bit bloated, and so on and so forth. But I also wanted to mention, because when you do come back from being away and you've not been eating in your normal routine, you can really crave getting back into routine again. You're like, I really am looking forward to just having my normal breakfast, lunch, evening meal. I mean, we were eating salads in the hotel room the last few evenings, but you can crave that. And also, I was quite keen to not be eating like sweets once I got home. And my husband had bought some chocolate, and I was like, oh, I think I'm done with eating chocolate because of the, just felt a bit like from being away. And he went, I thought you were gonna go back to doing all your normal stuff on Monday. And I was like, well, that's interesting because firstly, I didn't give up on anything while I was away. I was still mindful, right? But I thought, well, it's interesting that he's got that start again Monday mindset. So what I think old me from years ago probably would have eaten so much on a Sunday evening because I was starting a diet the next day. But I'm not starting a diet, I'm just getting back into my normal routine. So I was like, no, I don't want to start Monday feeling rubbish because I've overeaten on Sunday. So I'm home now, so I'm just going to get back into doing what I normally do instead of that I'm starting again Monday feeling. And I thought, yeah, he's lived with me long enough to know that that's not necessarily how I work. But I do think it is how I used to work, and I'm sure that there are people watching this or listening to this who might be feeling the same. They might kind of have that start again Monday mindset, which I think goes a little bit with perfectionism and that all or nothing approach, where if I can't do everything perfectly, I'm going to do nothing at all. And obviously, calories, if we're looking at that, we want to be in a calorie deficit. We're looking at kind of consistency over time, and overeating massively on one day is going to push our average calories up anyway. So I thought about that. And actually, that takes me very nicely onto a question I had in our community this week that I think a lot of you could relate to. And she said, I'm just reading it, it said, how do you stay on track when you've always got a really busy and chaotic life? And I guess that goes a little bit with that perfectionism mindset. Like, don't plan for things to be perfect or plan for the good days. Yeah, plan for chaos, not calm. If life is always like that, then it's really important that we ask ourselves, okay, what can I manage in my life consistently? What actually can I manage? If you're constantly starting and trying to do something and it's falling down, then you might be setting your expectations a little too high, or there might be too many habits that you're trying to change all at once. And I know this can be so tempting. I send you out targets if you're working with me on the upper 2 levels of the membership. And those targets are there as a guide for you. And sometimes you're going to be able to focus on everything, and other times you might be able to focus on less. But ask yourself what you can do consistently. And even if you just pick 1 or 2 commitments, like real commitments, like non-negotiables that you can manage even on the craziest of days, then that is how I would stay on track when life is chaotic and busy, to start with those. And that could be, I'm always going to start my day with a glass of water. I'm always going to have a decent breakfast. I'm going to do my evening routine. That's where I'm going to start. I'm going to be making sure that I know what's coming up tomorrow so I can feel calm and prepared and in control. You might not always get your steps, but does that mean you should give up on getting them at all? No. Again, look at them a bit as an average. Strive for more on the days that you can, but know that not every day is going to be perfect, and that is also okay. We don't need to wait for a better time. Oh, something's going on up there. I think some dogs are saying hello to each other. So we don't want to wait for a better time, wait for everything to calm down. Instead, we want to make the crazy times easier. And, I go on and on about the evening routine, but I do think that if you can feel calm and in control going into your day, then that is going to make things feel easier. And yeah, we've got those non-negotiables you could pick, but there are other things that you can do, like to take the pressure off a little bit. It might be that instead of expecting yourself to make a meal and chopping up all the veg, you start buying pre-chopped veg. I know in an ideal world you'd do it all yourself, but you know what, buy some frozen onions so you don't have to chop them, or buy the pack of stir-fry veg so you can just pop it in a pan really easily and just make a stir-fry. You know, do some things that can make it easier. Don't always feel like you've got to take the perfect option. And then ask yourself, and then there's Claire's question, Claire that I've just been away with. Claire's got this thing that if at the end of the day you feel like nothing's gone to plan, then ask yourself what you can do now so that you will feel like you've got some wins in that day. What can I do now or between now and bed that is going to make me feel like this day has gone well? Focus on those things that you are managing. You know, practice self-compassion and understanding. Be proud of what you're doing because you are doing something. And I was chatting to a client earlier who was really annoyed when her steps were super low one day this week, but actually her average steps were great. But she was so focused on the thing that didn't go well that she almost didn't notice everything that was. And you know what? You feel much better about your journey when you are focused on the things you're doing well. It's much easier to keep going when you do that. Stopped and had a chat with someone. This is the thing about walking along a path like this, as you meet dogs and dog owners, and I do love that. But I feel like I've covered most of the things that I wanted to cover with you, really about embracing that no crap cake mentality, that when you get back from being away, you might find yourself feeling a bit fed up, a bit bloated. You might feel like, oh no, I've undone everything. But focus on the actions rather than where you wish you were. And that makes it more exciting, I think. Like I've come back from being away and I'm like, oh, actually, I'm feeling really excited. And I know it's slightly different because I was away doing high rocks, and having that confidence boost, right? I'm like, oh, I can't wait until my next event. I'm also really pleased that the weather's changing, the evenings are lighter, and that I get to focus on going out and running a little bit more. I get to focus on giving my body the fuel and nourishment that makes it feel so good. And sometimes having a few days where you're not eating in the way that you normally would reminds you why you love the routine that you normally have, why it works so well for you. So yeah, I think on that note, I will leave you in peace to enjoy the rest of your day, whatever you're doing, as I continue just walking home for a moment.